Hello, everyone. This is David Ellis, and I'm back with PATTI LUCIA for the Week in Review. We usually do this broadcast just to recap on the crazy shit that happens in 1 week. Because as PATTI has said before, it's coming hot and heavy. And so this week we had the election show. I call it the election show specifically because there is no end to this thing. Like, you remember when y'all are a first world country, PATTI?
Yes.
Why has this drawn on for so long?
Yes.
It gives me the heebie-jeebies. It's like it's an election. This is what it is, right? So I am wondering what's happening there. You want to give me some insight because I have not a clue.
Well, I do find it interesting that as we've become more computerized, right, and we're using all of this technology, the process seems to have slowed. So there is kind of that does seem like incongruent with what one would expect from the election. So I think that it's fair to ask what the heck is going on. Now, in Florida, it's very interesting because Florida has had this sketchy history, the hanging Chad situation, that whole history that was really embarrassing. So Florida has actually come a long way since the hanging Chad debacle. And our elections were quite smooth and we were probably one of the first to report. It's interesting that the feds came in and wanted to investigate, like they kind of wanted to come in and make sure that everything was fine. Like there was some kind of concern about Florida when in fact Florida, things were kind of crystal clear what was happening. The operations, the systems were in place. And nobody, even the losers were like, yeah, that's, that checks out, right? Nobody was kind of raising any alarm bells about what was going on in Florida. But yeah, so it just kind of was all really crystal clear. And then you have these other places where it's like, well, it's going to take us 2 weeks to count all of these ballots and all of these machines that didn't seem to be working on election day. And then the people left and they went to another place and then they couldn't vote there because they had already logged in over there and then they couldn't, and they just happened to be Republican places to vote. This particularly, I was hearing a lot about in Arizona, which, where the race was really, really close. And so that's kind of one that remains kind of in question, even though I think now they're saying, it's leaning towards the Democratic incumbent. So I find all of this really really interesting. It does seem like we've slipped into kind of more the status of a third world country when it comes to elections, as opposed to being, that leader in democracy that we claim to be. There's a very, there's a big gap between what we claim to be and what we are in practice, I think. Those are my thoughts initially. I could go on and on.
No, I try to stay away from talking too much about American politics, and I'll tell you why. It's not that I don't know what's going on. It's that something has gone horribly wrong down there in the electoral process, and I think you guys better get back to paper ballots. Something has gone horribly wrong. Like, this is twice that this kind of thing is happening. And honestly speaking, I find it very interesting. I had a friend of mine who went to Florida to get their license renewed. Okay? The machines work perfectly every time you go to DMV, right? You mean to tell me that you have election machines failing on the day? Like, I would have a problem with the supplier. Right. And I would fire the supplier of these electoral machines.
It's kind of like, you only have to work on this day. You don't have to work 365 days a year. You just have to work on this one day. It's right? Oh, but yeah, I agree. I think that there's a lot of, and there were a lot of people who, when we went to, in that the Dominion, I think, has been in question for a really long time. There are people who have said, "Didn't you guys watch Ozark?" Because if you had watched Ozark, it was always like people said, you know, in that show, they were giving a big heads up to this very problem and this level of corruption. It was almost like Ozark was like, hey.
I fail to understand how they can have successive failures where this kind of stuff is concerned. I think y'all might want to go back to paper because the technology is not working for y'all.
Yep.
And it's causing doubt. And the worst thing is when you have doubt in elections, people will get upset. People will do whatever they need to do.
Well, it's not a problem, though. It's not a problem, though, if you make it treasonous to question.
There's a point. That is a point. Honestly, I don't know what the specifics are, but I can pretty much tell you, just trying to be neutral, let's go to the actual what's actually happening in the US right now as per normal update. So I'm going to show this on stream right now.
Yeah.
And this has been updated when? 1:42 at CST.
Yeah.
So in the US Senate, you have the GOP at 48 and the Democrats at 48, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And obviously the majority is a 51 majority, with the following states still out. They say that the Democrats will retain the Senate and the Republicans will most likely take over the House. Now, the House, as we see, if we go to the next graphic here, the Republicans are at 211, the Dems are at 203, and the map is very much red. And that's basically what is happening with regard to the House. Okay, so the Republicans will most likely take the House. They need 218 for the majority.
Right.
In the governor's race, the gubernatorial race, you have the GOP has 25 and governors in. They're already over that mark. They will be over that mark very soon. And the Democrats have 23. So let's break down what that means. Because whenever this is done on the news, they never actually tell people what that means. The Senate will be the ones making your laws, okay? But laws are meant to be broken, especially when you have a majority in the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. That could deem anything unconstitutional if they feel like it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
In the House, that would be public policy. How public policy is created and discerned. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, quite possibly, society can change just by representatives in the House changing the way they vote on certain subjects, how spending is done, etc. The governors are responsible for their localities. So, in the US government, as an example, you have governors who are responsible for the states that they operate in.
Okay. And
so governors can be quite problematic when it is you try to institute federal policies. Okay, it's certainly this situation in Canada, right? When the premiers don't like something, Ottawa knows about it. Definitely knows about it.
Right.
And so I'm going to come back here to you, Patty, and let's discuss this.
Okay.
The Republicans were expecting that they would sweep the House completely.
Mm-hmm. Big red waves, tsunami, right?
There was enough hype around the subject for people to expect that. But reality bites. And people went to the polls and they voted on certain issues. And as I said before in another broadcast, if the Republicans drop their stance on a couple of issues, then the Democrats would not stand a chance. There are a bunch of Republicans, the far right, who are spreading a kind of racist message, a xenophobic message. And if they were controlled by the Republican Party, the Democrats may not stand a chance. So people went to vote against the GOP as an example because they think they're going to take away women's rights to abortion as an example. Okay? And people went to vote for the GOP because they're tired of being made to feel like shit in every movie that Hollywood puts out. They're tired of having to worry about their kids in school being taught and exposed to things which are absolutely contrary to their own belief systems and their values. Right? Nobody wants their kids turned against them and their value systems and so on. And so people want to vote for that because they don't want society devolving into anarchy on either side. Here's what I'm thinking. If the Republicans would control the racist element and the xenophobic element, they could have simply, with regard to the abortion issue, say this will be a governor's decision, state by state, and that might have calmed people's nerves. As opposed to it,
how was it not that?
Here's the thing. This is what people are afraid of. They're afraid that they will make it a national, a federal offense to have abortions and so on. And a lot of the GOP candidates were trying to push that this is what is going to happen. And people got turned off by that. They shoot themselves in the foot. That's on the GOP side. And I agree. I think any rhetoric that's saying we're going to ban abortion
right across the country, that's definitely going to shoot them in the foot. I think and I agree with you, if they had focused on, listen, we're leaving it up to the states, which I'm pretty sure that's what the Supreme Court decision was all about. It's like, look, this is a state decision, and it's really state by state, and kind of cleared up some of that. I think maybe, but I do also think that the rhetoric coming from the Dems was very much painting it as a ban as opposed to putting it back in the hands of the states.
Yes, I understand that, but the Democrats had their own problems, right? And as I said before, and I'm going to say it again every time we have this show, this is not a right-leaning show, this is not a left-leaning show. Patty and I have a difference of opinion, but we're pretty much in the center because we think both sides are pretty much idiotic. Both sides.
Yeah.
And so with regard to the Democrats, the woke agenda has really hurt them, and it will continue to hurt them.
Yeah, it'll continue. As a matter of fact, it seems like they're doubling down on it, and I don't understand.
When will people realize that any ideology that seeks to divide people, to make people hate each other, to make people not trust each other, is doomed to failure as a political party? When will they realize this stuff? And I don't see anything about the woke ideology that I can identify with as a decent human being.
It's ultimately anti-human. You push it to its extreme. It's anti-human. And I think that this is whether there's an ideology coming from the right or an ideology coming from the left, if it's extreme, it's anti-human, and most humans at some point will recognize that. It's like, hey, wait a minute, they might not articulate it in that way, but they feel it. They feel that this is kind of contrary to kind of humanness. And ultimately, we're not going to vote against our own humanity. I mean, there will be small segments who may do that, but ultimately, I think that most of us will recognize the inhumanity in any extreme ideology eventually, no matter how pretty of a package, of propaganda they might present to us eventually.
Buddy, I don't understand. How did we get here? You have people on national television literally inciting hatred and distrust.
Right.
These are news anchors when the news is to be about what happened, where it happened, how it happened, and why it happened.
Yeah.
You got news anchors on the news.
Yeah.
Literally hate mongering on the news. And we watch it.
I don't think it's really news anymore. I think it's no matter whether you're looking on the left or you're looking on the right, it's just that they're propaganda. And I think that the whole idea of objective news, I think has been lost, or it certainly has been whittled away over the years. And so now we're seeing it in extreme, and that's why more and more people are looking to alternative sources for the news, like sane, middle way kind of, how do we make sense of all of the crazy stuff that we're hearing? How do we make sense of it? So they're looking for alternative voices that can kind of sit back and put the ideology aside and say, all right, well, these are the things that are happening in the world that humans are generally concerned about as humans, not as Republicans or Democrats or right or left or whatever, but just as humans.
The thing about it is that, like, take example, the woke ideology, because it's a real bother to me, honestly speaking.
I can tell.
I want to say something here because it's getting worse and worse. I tried to go to the movies recently. Oh my God!
What did you try to see?
Before I continue this discussion, let me show you guys some simple logic here. You see this lady that's sitting next to me in this broadcast? She's a white woman, as white as it comes. She's Italian, she's white, Caucasian. You're white, you're white.
All right, whatever.
Right? And she's sitting next to this black dude. We don't have an issue with each other. We do not have an issue with each other. You think I'm going to be telling Patty how much she's white privilege and all that kind of nonsense? Guys, like seriously, guys, it actually annoys me. And then you go to the movies and you try to watch something on Netflix. I am thinking about canceling my Netflix subscription.
Yeah.
And I'll explain to you why. Because I can't find anything to watch in there that is not trying to tell me that because I am a man, I am toxic.
Yes.
Enough of that nonsense.
Yes, it's the poisoning of the language. It's like you sit there and you're watching and you think, oh, this sounds like a pretty decent show. And then all of a sudden they tuck in language here and they embed language there. They inject certain words there and you're like, oh.
And I'm not stupid. I'm not a brick. I actually see it. And I'm like, this is not getting past the filter of my mind. This is stupid. Mm-hmm. You are stupid. I am not promoting that show. It's like people ask me whether I went to see certain movies, like, or did I see the She-Hulk? I'm not going to watch it. For real. I won't watch it. A whole bunch of woke films have come out. I'm not going to watch them. I find myself now having to watch reruns to the point where I'm streaming like Alfred Hitchcock, the original.
Classic.
The 1952 series, like the original.
Yeah.
Because I have had enough of this nonsense, and I'm like, none of that is getting past my mind. If you guys are watching this broadcast, I urge you, do not promote that stuff. Do not watch it. Do not buy tickets to go see that kind of stuff. Any kind of stuff that actually will be trashing you when you actually pay that money. You pay money to sit in a theater to have somebody tell you you're a bad person.
But this is why so many of these shows and movies and everything are losing money. Because people, when they watch a movie, they watch a show, why do we do it? We do it because we want to feel good. We want to be entertained, right? We want to be entertained. And then we're kind of beat up. So it's this feeling of like, oh, that didn't feel so good,
Yes.
So I don't want to watch that, or that's not going to be something that gets 5 stars in my review, because I don't, people probably won't even do the review because they don't want to be seen as toxic or sexist or racist or all of this stuff, so they'll just be quiet. So we kind of quietly abstain. And I think there are more and more people doing that, but where it shows is that many of these movies and these shows are losing money. And then what happens is when people don't go and people don't watch these movies or these shows, then the people who make these shows get all in a huff and blame us. Like, you need to be, like there was a movie that was put out. It was hyped, all about 2 men in love, 2 gay men in love, and it was a whole love story, and I forget what it was, bro something, right? And it tanked. There was nobody, people didn't come to watch it because it was kind of the same bullshitty. I'm like, okay, so these 2 guys, they meet, they fall in love, and then eventually they decide they're going to not really have a relationship. They're going to do something else because, I don't know. That's kind of how it goes. And people are just like, nah, that's not, So we're wired for, I was just having a conversation with a friend who said, I don't know, he's young, a millennial, right? I don't know about this nuclear family stuff. And I said, well, let me tell you about the nuclear family stuff. I said, I used to feel the same way you did. I don't know about this nuclear family stuff. It's old, it's this, it's that. And I've come full circle on that. I actually think that the nuclear family is one of the fundamental and the strongest units of our culture and our society. We are wired. We are hardwired for nuclear family. And so when we go and we see entertainment and we see we see people coming together in kind of more traditional ways and kind of, the romances we might see or the comedies, this coming together of love and, and then people deciding to have babies. It's like, that feels good. Because that is like, that's right. That's the human story. I'm going to cry a little and I'm going to laugh and I'm going to feel good. But what is it? It's an expression of, a lot of the things that people are poo-pooing now. Oh, nuclear family. Oh, this or that. But I think we're really hardwired for it. And I think that we are doing ourselves, our families, and our whole societies a great disservice when we say we need to break that apart and we need to start putting expressions in culture and movies and everything that show, the nuclear family is bogus. We need to do these other constructs. Not that those other constructs are bad, do them, but don't negate the nuclear family, because it really, in my opinion, and from what I've seen, it's absolutely fundamental, for the human experience, whether we choose to be in a nuclear family, whether that's what we decide to kind of arrange our life in or not. Don't look at people who do nuclear family and say, oh, they're backwards, they're unevolved, or all of those judgments that we have now on the people who get together and have families and have babies in a nuclear family. We need to celebrate them and support them because they are one of the core bricks in our culture and society. So I celebrate them. I used to, think, that's of the old time, that's not of the 21st century. And I've come full circle on that. I think celebrate that. That's beautiful. And, and I think it will always be beautiful, even sometimes when it's dysfunctional, because I think sometimes, in our culture and society, often the nuclear family is dysfunctional, and that's sad, but it doesn't mean that the problem is the nuclear family. It means that the problem is what has happened to the nuclear family, the forces that have torn it apart. I think some context needs to be had here. Okay. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to actually... That was a tangent. I'm going to actually out Patti right now. Patti used to be an activist back in the day. I was.
She was firmly on the nouveau left type thing.
I was a Marxist.
A full-on Marxist.
Yeah, that was a full-on
Marxist.
Marxist.
What you hear from this woman right now is the voice of experience talking.
Yes.
And reality setting in. So
yeah, because when people talk about Marxism, I'm like, have you read Marx?
Yeah, no,
have you read Marx?
That's the first thing I want to say. The second thing I want to say was that I always prided myself. I had a lot of pride that I would listen to anything and see any viewpoint. And whatever the case may be, I prided myself on saying that whatever. And now I find myself losing brain cells every time I talk to people with this woke ideology. I want to argue, but then it's like, what is the point?
Yeah.
They don't listen. They don't understand and they don't listen. And all they do is just shout over people.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to the new kind of activism in a while. But I just want to say on both sides, because I won't talk to a racist. I won't talk to somebody who is racist against black people. I just won't. Right? And on my side, I outed Patti. Let me out myself as well. I have never cared about left and right. Never. I never cared about religion. I joined religions just to see what they were talking about.
Yeah.
But I never committed to them. I don't like joining groups. You will never see me out in the streets protesting. I'm not going to get a placard and run up to anybody. When it enters my house and my doorstep, and it's on my doorstep, I will deal with it. And I won't need to run to a bunch of other people to fight on my behalf.
Well, you know what?
I will deal with it.
I think there's something really interesting too about your story, and it's an interesting contrast with mine. So you, from what I can tell, and what I've gathered in our friendship, is that you immersed yourself in the study of spirituality and esoterics from a pretty young age, and became very, very knowledgeable of that whole area. I was raised in a religious household that rejected my expression of sexuality, and so because of that experience, with kind of feeling like I had been hurt and rejected by religion, I believe, and still had a very strong sense that we needed to do something about the condition of the world. I turned to politics in my 20s because I believed that politics was the answer. And it took me a decade to realize, politics is not the answer. But it was good. I don't feel that I wasted that 10 years because, like you said, I learned so much from that experience. And so now I can sit back and say, even though now I engage in it a little bit, like I did go vote, but I hadn't voted in many years. And today, and I returned to voting simply because I was concerned. I had some concerns about children and education. I was like, that's going to bring me back. But I don't think of politics as a solution anymore. And so then afterwards returned and started to explore spirituality and realized, let me not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. There's far more to explore in a spiritual journey. And that's when I really immersed myself in some of the things that you were immersing yourself in when you were a teenager.
It makes
I had kind of meandered back to it.
Honestly, this is what I think. I think that people gonna be people, okay? This is why I don't get caught up on racism, all that gender shit, and whatever else. I don't get caught up in it because people are going to be people. They're always gonna find something to fight about, to argue about, something to do, and the scum always rises to the top. So the political arguments. The people that want power the most, they will step on anybody's neck to get it. They're going to rise to the top. That's what I think. And so my view for you guys is, if you are woke, you ain't happy. If you're racist, you ain't happy, right? You're always going to have this angst in your body, in your mind, and so on. And I have only one question to ask you guys. If you are in that spectrum, how many years you think you have to live? You're going to spend years and years all wound up and pent up? No. I have a solution for you. It's called sticking your middle finger up at everything, returning back to your center, and looking at everything and saying, what the hell, I don't give a shit. Okay? And going about your life, buying some fruit, go get some ice cream, sit down, and chill to, you know what, out. Okay? Which would bring us to the next issue. People trying to make people go off center. I am going to share my screen again. This is another thing that actually is happening in the news right now.
Okay.
Here we have.
Oh, goodness. Our favorite tyrant.
Listen. Listen. So, in the news this week, there is a review of the use of the Emergency Powers Act, which was invoked. And it does not look very good for the Trudeau government in the way it was done. The revelation comes from notes. I'm going to read this for you.
Okay.
Taken during, first of all, documents offer a rare look into the meeting between Justin Trudeau and premiers hours before Emergency Act was invoked. For those of you who don't know, we had a situation in Canada. It was during that thing that happened over the last 3 years. And Canada invoked an Emergency Powers Act. And
directed at the trucker convoy.
Right. And the truckers went into Ottawa and they blocked up Ottawa. The Emergency Powers Act was invoked, which suspended the rights, and they were arrested, and some of them are still in legal difficulty. Their property was confiscated. The revelation comes from notes taken during a call with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, with several premiers expressing concern that using the Emergencies Act would inflame an already dangerous situation. But Ontario's Doug Ford said he strongly supported the move. Okay? Ottawa, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau told Canada's premiers he would only consider using the military as a last resort to deal with the so-called Freedom Convoy blockades, as several provincial leaders expressed concern of his use of the Emergencies Act, and that they would inflame an already dangerous and disruptive protest crisis, according to newly revealed notes from the Times. So they were basically telling him that this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me tell you how I feel about that. When you
can I just say, where were you? Were you still in?
Yes, I was.
Okay. When
you get soldiers involved in a protest, there better be guns in the protest. When you release the military, the police force is there to fight crime, criminals, to bring criminals to justice. Soldiers are there to defend the state and to kill the enemies of the state.
That's right.
I'll repeat what I said. Police are there to maintain law and order, arrest criminals, and bring criminals to justice. Soldiers are there to defend the state, to make sure that the state is secure, and to kill the enemies of the state. When you get soldiers involved in anything, they weren't deployed as en masse, right? They weren't deployed, but they deployed a section of the RCMP that is not used for protest, because they were missing numbers, because the protest was so large. They had to recruit other people who were masked, special units of the RCMP. The problem with this, and I have no feelings about it one way or another, except to say, call wrong out when it's wrong. Those guys did not come to Ottawa with guns. They came to Ottawa with trucks. They did not come to Ottawa armed. They came with trucks. They disrupted life in Ottawa. I understand that. I absolutely see both sides of that equation.
That's what protests do.
They disrupted life in Ottawa. So I see both sides of the equation. They made it a hellscape, apparently, for the Ottawa residents. Okay, for the Ottawa residents, let me ask you a question. Did you see any of those protesters out there with guns threatening people? Did any of these protesters run up to you or your family and threaten to hurt you or your family?
Well, that bouncy house was a bit of a problem.
I wanted to go in that bouncy house. Okay? Did these protesters do any of those things? Did they do anything like that? You see, the day will come when you have to fight for your rights. Okay? For something that you believe in. Would you want somebody deploying armed men against you?
Soldiers.
Because that's an act of violence. Who starts the violence first is always the wrong, in my opinion, in a fight situation. The person who starts the violence first is in the wrong. I don't care who you are. I don't care how you feel about what I just said. The person who starts the violence first is in the wrong.
Yes. Always. You know, this situation in Ottawa, and I guess it was 3 days of this emergency, and the army was called in, or Canada's equivalent of an army was called in to quell these protesters, makes me think of Kent State. And the situation with Kent State, and how that went down as an event that was a sobering event that we needed to pay very close attention to when looking back on our history. So here was a situation where they were peaceful Vietnam War protesters on the campus of Kent State, and they had occupied some buildings and did what protesters do. And I guess the Army National Guard was called in, and they fired and killed 4 unarmed students. And that was a real eye-opener for many people. So it was, again, just as it happened in Canada, it was the army coming in, defending the state, and killing those people who in some way were seen as a threat to the state. So it was really heavy-handed and really disturbing. It's like a disturbing moment in that whole era. And I think that that moment for Trudeau and the Trudeau's, calling in the army on his own people, it will be one of the more disturbing moments in Trudeau's, in Trudeau's time in Canada, and will be, and I think has and continues to serve as a turning point, I think, in many of the people's sentiments towards him and his administration. I think we're going to see that continue to play out, and how he was seen internationally.
Listen,
also, how he was seen internationally.
Listen, I have seen some disturbing developments. All right, my background is in law and business. I have seen some disturbing developments in international human rights law. Okay? Every country has signed into a convention called the UN Declaration of Human Rights. Inside the UN Declaration of Human Rights, and I invite everyone listening to this broadcast, Google it, read it. It's not very long, right? There are about 19 clauses on it. Please read it. Please read it and tell me if what's going on everywhere in the world right now has anything to do with that convention. The UN Declaration of Human Rights was ratified after World War II. Because we learned a lesson from the Nazis. That shit could go sideways real quick and real fast, and millions of people could die.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was done was that all the nations in the world came together to create this document that they can all agree on, that human beings deserve to live free and without fear.
Right.
For those of you listening to this broadcast right now, I'm going to ask you a very simple question. If I asked you to say something inflammatory and so on, all of you are afraid. All of you are afraid. All of you have some kind of opinion that you can't express. Some kind of opinion because you're afraid that somebody will cancel you, which is a kind of violence in and of itself.
Agreed.
Somebody will put you out there or cancel you or whatever.
It's a form of tyranny. It's social tyranny. Yeah.
You're afraid. You are afraid, all of you. And my question to you is, when you feel that in your body, is it cool for you? Is it cool for you? Is it okay? You think that being afraid is a good thing? Mm. You have a bunch of people out there suppressing society left, right, and center. And I'm reminded of some very wise words which went along the lines of, if you don't stand for something, you will fall for everything.
Anything, right? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You got to stand for something. You got to tell people that this cancel stuff was wrong. And there's a way around the cancel stuff. And I don't understand. You see, even if you tried it, the governments would try to sabotage it if it's not in their interest. And that's why I tell you, politicians aren't worth anything. None of them. Mm. Okay? Mm-hmm. Because the truth of the matter is, if you started a fund for people who were canceled to get their businesses back, somebody would try to sabotage that because they
or they would freeze your account like they did with the truckers in Canada.
Yeah, freeze your. That is a very nasty step to take.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really disgusting.
Yeah, so yeah. And I think that the financial tyranny of things is probably something that we will see. We saw it wielded in Canada, and we saw it hinted at with PayPal, though they took it back. I think that the financial tyranny is kind of an aspect of, we're going to see more of that. That I think will be wielded more as we move forward,
I don't care about politics. I really don't. I really don't care about a lot of stuff. But I'm going to tell you guys, vote. I don't care whether it's left or right. Center, I don't care if it's blue or whatever. I don't care who the person is. Vote for the person that will dismantle that stuff. The mm-hmm. cancel culture, mm-hmm. the woke culture, the racist culture. Mm-hmm. Vote for the person who will dismantle all of those things.
All of that. Because it's dangerous. Very dangerous.
Evil and dangerous.
Can I tell you something? Like, I didn't vote for nearly 12 years. I refused because I didn't want to participate in a system I didn't believe in. Mm-hmm. And people were very upset with me. They were like, you need to vote. And I said, I don't want to kind of consent to a system that I don't think is working for me. And 3 months ago, I renewed my voter registration so that I could do exactly what you just said, David. It was time for me to go to the polls for that very reason, to vote for those very reasons.
Because you're going to lose either which way. You're going to lose on something, but vote for the least hateful person.
Yeah.
Vote for the least hateful person, because if you don't vote, a lot of the times, the most hateful person will come in. Vote for the person who's going to dismantle division in your society. Vote for the person who's going to, and I don't care if it's a Republican, a Democrat. I don't care if it's a Hispanic. I don't care if it's somebody who just jumped over the wall or the border or whatever. I don't care who it is, whether it's a priest or criminal in jail. Vote for the person who is going to dismantle all the hatred in your society. I don't care who it is. Anybody.
I'm gonna go even further. I think that people like us need to also run for office, run for local office, be the voices for that. I think like there's a whole.
The problem with that is that when genuine, honest, good people try to run, corporations do not like that stuff at all. And what they do is they pre-cancel these people, right? So that they can't join any party, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans. Y'all only have two parties. No, y'all have the Libertarians as well. When decent people, this world has how many people are in the US? There are lots of people in the US, like millions and millions of people, tens of millions.
300 and something million, yeah.
Right, there are 300 and something million people in the US. I'm quite sure that in that group of people, there are decent, law-abiding, good and decent people. I'm not even going to say religious or nothing. It doesn't matter. They are good people who can do a really good job, who will look at people as human beings, as opposed to just clout waiting to get. Yeah. So I am saying to people here on this broadcast, you got to find these people and promote these people. I don't care who they are. They are decent people out there. You got people in politics who've been part of sex rings. You got people in politics who've been part of all sorts of weird kind of stuff in the last few years, and so that we've discovered these scandals and so on. It's like power goes to the head. They were not good people to start with. They were just fronting. And so I think that where this topic is concerned, and especially the deployment of like Emergency Powers Act and heavy-handed against people, supporting cancel culture, supporting woke culture, because these people support them, because it's like a leeching of power to both sides. You scratch our back, we're gonna scratch you, get you elected, and in return, you're gonna let us run rampant on the population of people who just want to go about their lives and be free.
Yeah. And I will, and I want to add that those of you, those folks in our audience who are creatives, who do art, who write, like me, and that cultural expression goes a long way in doing some of the things that we're talking about. So letting your cultural expression be an expression that is the opposite expression of wokeism. Right. And so I do that with my writing and with my books. And I don't have to say this is anti-woke per se, but it is a very different world vision. So I think those of us who are creative, who do art, who do music, who write, that we can give creative expression to a different world vision and get it out there and have just as much of an impact, and even more so perhaps than say protesting or going out, and do it in creative ways that are life affirming and human affirming. So there are lots of ways to counteract, counterbalance that kind of anti-human wokeism that's kind of permeating everything, that vision.
Promote love and unity and stop this nonsense of division and hate, which
exactly
brings us to the next issue on the climate.
Yes.
Let me tell you something about climate. I love nature. I absolutely love nature. I live in nature. Okay? We are nature, and that is my perspective on it. There are harmful things happening to the environment. I think big companies do not give a shit about the environment on the whole. And you know what? There's something in corporate called CSR. It's corporate social responsibility. But what it is window dressing
Virtual signaling at a corporate level.
We're cleaning up the beach, but we're dropping a bunch of toxic stuff.
But don't look over there. Look over here. We're doing really wonderful things.
It's hilarious, right? We're cleaning up the beach, so we have a little driver campaign.
Yeah.
We're going to clean up one section of the highway. Oh my God, that's CSR. You guys know what I'm talking about now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right. They don't give a shit about the environment for real, because I know some of these executives and they don't give a shit about the environment. It's about the bottom line. They got shareholders to answer to, and they're going to be going down that particular line. And it makes me laugh because whenever they do CSR, especially certain companies like petroleum companies, oh my God, you got oil leaks all over the Niger Delta, right? But we're cleaning up a beach in the U.S. like, my bad.
Yeah.
Listen,
it's almost like how some of the biggest monsters in our world, like someone like Bill Gates, uses philanthropy to somehow, showcase how wonderful he is for the world. So it's often how philanthropy is being, has been used in the past to kind of offset the image of somebody who has generally more nefarious, intentions. I
have a problem with anybody who is a celebrity. Okay, there are celebrities who go out of their way to help people. Right? Let me tell you the difference between somebody who is helping people genuinely and somebody is helping people just because they want you to think of them as a good person.
They don't tell you.
They don't tell you. They just do.
You never know about it.
You never know about it. They just do. But then you have celebrities that are out there. They were probably poor before. They came from mega backgrounds and they've made a lot of money and they're out there and they're outlandish and look at us. We are driving this car and so on. And I'm going to take a snipe out of the rap artists that are out there, hip hop artists and rap artists, promoting I got millions of dollars and I got gold chains and I got the car and I got bitches and hoes and stuff like that. Wow. I know you don't care about being role models. I know y'all don't care about any of that stuff. You don't have to care about anybody. You're just living your life with your millions of dollars and stuff like that. There's something to be said for what goes up will eventually come down. Okay? There is. So you keep living that life, thinking that karma, God, whoever, your creator, the thing that is giving you that air that's running through your body right now, is not watching and looking at what you are doing with the life you have been given. Eventually it comes around, and a lot of them are dying.
And you know what, too?
Died just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You're going to die eventually.
Yeah.
And your mark on the world, would be the bitches and hoes and the songs that you do. It will not stand the test of time. You are not Bob Marley.
No, but and I just want to say that the saddest thing about this is the utter it's a tragic irony, because many of them do believe that they have been empowered. They do believe that they now have freedom because they have money and they have whatever success, but they are essentially slaves of the music industry. They have masters and they are the slaves. They are masters who tell them how it is they need to present themselves and whatever, and encourage them to put out a particular message to their own communities, which is destructive. So not only are they the slaves to it, but they are enabling the mental slavery of their own communities, and that's, I think,
tragedy.
It's tragedy. It's like layers of tragedy in that, I think.
It kills me. Can I show you something?
Yeah.
The people in the center, and I'm talking to you guys who are decent at home, law-abiding citizens, who are not on the right or the left. You may not identify as anything. You just want to be able to feel okay, feel at peace, feel secure, etc. The war on the right and the left is not the right against the left. Both of them are against you in the center.
Yes. All of us.
You want to know why I say that? Because the neo-Nazis are not going to the Bronx and fighting black people in the Bronx. They're going to South Chicago or in Compton and these areas. They're not going down inside there. Because that would be direct war immediately, okay? But they're going to beat up on middle-class black people in the middle of, I don't know, Arkansas or Georgia. Do you see where I'm coming from? Antifa is not going to find the Proud Boys at their headquarters. They're not going to say, okay, let's meet up here and let's settle things. They're not going to do that. But they're going to beat up on women who are protesting a transgender man exposing himself to them in a bathroom. Okay? They're not fighting each other. They're fighting you guys in the center. They're all fighting y'all in the center, trying to pull y'all on one side of the fence or the other side of the fence through the function of fear and hatred and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay? Notice that the fringe, sick elements of society are not meeting up in some car park somewhere and settling things. That would be a big relief on everybody, including the police. And here's the other thing. The woke culture who wants to defund the police. I want to just speak to you all for a moment. Do you know what happens when you defund the police? And I'm going to speak to you because I have respect for the police and armed forces. They protect y'all. Let me tell you what happens when they defund the police. The police stop working. What do you think all those right-wing gun nuts are going to do if the police stop working for 24 hours? If the police say, we are officially not working for the next 24 hours, everybody just have at it. If you are woke, if you have anything with the word ist or ism at the end of it, where do you think you would be if the police are not protecting you? These guys, the right-wing gun nuts that live in right-wing gun nut land, are going to find you and exterminate you. That's what's going to happen. You're going to have the purge for real. Not the movie. You'll have the purge for real. Because once you suspend law and order, anarchy ensues. And the people that are going to get hurt in the crossfire are the regular people who are in the middle. Guys, when you are talking, and I'm going to be very soft here, when you are talking about all those plans that you'll have for society, think it through to its final conclusion. Because I do. Because the army protects y'all. If the US was invaded right now by any bunch of enemies, you may not like the army. You may think that the army is just a bunch of violent thugs and the police are a bunch of violent thugs, and some of them have given you reason to believe that that is the case. I will admit that. I can be balanced, absolutely. But if you were invaded right now, Antifa is not going to save you.
Yeah. And they just okay. And speaking of purge, there are just I think just today or yesterday there are these videos that are coming out of New York City that are very much about purging. And so you have these folks running through the streets of New York, destroying cars and destroying property and assaulting people, at will. And this is, just kind of running wild through the streets of New York. So I think it's not just the extremist gun lovers, who are people might be vulnerable to. It's kind of the criminal element too. That's like, well, the streets are ours, so
Yeah.
whatever. So it's kind of like and you're caught, like you said, you're caught in the middle. The rest of us who are in the middle, we're like, hey, we just want to live peaceful lives and make sure our families are safe, and eat a good meal and send our kids to school and know.
But hey, defund the police. Defund them.
Most people, like you said, David, most people are, and I believe in the 80-20 rule. Like, you've got, 80% of the folks are ordinary people who are law-abiding. They have their families, they have their loved ones, they have their friends. They want to just live. They want to kind of just follow the rules and live a decent life and live the best life they can live and not hurt anybody. And then you have the 20% who have other intentions, and unfortunately, they dominate. Yeah, they dominate, and so it's kind of that old 80-20 rule. But I would agree with you. I think like the folks in the middle who just want to live decent lives and want to protect their families were kind of caught in the middle between, the extremes, the dangerous extremes.
The dangerous extremes. Well, we're going to share the screen one more time for a less dangerous extreme.
Okay.
And here we have.
Oh, boy. I don't know. I don't even know if I would.
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
All right.
Climate change activists target Emily Carr painting at Vancouver Art Gallery with maple syrup. So this is a story that broke this week. These two geniuses went to a museum, found a painting of Emily Carr's, and decided that they were going to make a statement. They're from Stop Fracking Around. Okay? And so I'm going to play. This is coming from Twitter. What happened?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. We're Stop Fracking Around. We're here to raise awareness about the climate crisis. The climate crisis is the biggest crisis of our time. And instead of acting responsibly, the government is building fossil fuel infrastructure. Instead of stopping the emissions coming from gas and oil immediately, the government is acting like children. They are building fossil fuel infrastructure. They are building pipelines. We are here to raise our voices, to say that we are not going to give up. We are not going to back down. We are not going to be quiet. We are going to continue to get into the faces of the people, into the faces of citizens. We are going to continue to fight and act on behalf of humanity, on behalf of the climate crisis. We have one demand: that the government stop building the Coastal GasLink pipeline, that the government cancel fossil fuel infrastructures, that the government cancels the Trans Mountain pipeline, that the government cancels the Coastal GasLink pipeline in accordance with the wishes of the hereditary chiefs of the West Nation. This is our future. We have every right as citizens to rise up and disrupt the status.
Okay. So, in case you're wondering why the hand was on the wall, they glued themselves.
Yeah, they super glue, and that's the thing. Throw stuff on a piece of art, and then glue a part of your body to the art or to the wall while kind of being videotaped, making a speech about climate change. Yeah. So and that's the new form of climate activism. And the thing is that these, well, first of all, I think that this kind of act really feeds into, and a lot of people might not like me saying this, but like feeds into kind of this general narcissism that is present in a lot of these young people. And I do have some empathy for them, because I think that the whole they're completely manipulated by folks who have been feeding them fear. And so now what we have are all of these young people who are so swept up. They've been swept up in this panic about fossil fuels and about climate change and all of this, that they are, acting out in this way. So they're pouring milk out in stores, and they're laying in the traffic, and they're throwing tomato soup on Picasso's, and
I got more stuff for you.
You have more stuff. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So what are they doing here?
This is the Porsche display center. And these geniuses, and they are geniuses, literally, they're scientists, they superglued themselves to the floor.
They keep selling this dream, this capitalistic dream, that we're all going to have fancy cars, and we're going to be able to drive wherever we want, whenever we want, and use all of the energy that we want. This is absolute farce. And the reason they do this is to just keep making money. But this is at the cost of our futures. And we're asking Volkswagen, which is one of the largest lobbying groups in Germany and the world, that is stopping the German government and global governments from taking action towards a just transition. So part of our campaign has been asking the German government to decarbonize the transport sector by putting in a 100-kilometer speed limit on German motorways, and bringing back a €9 ticket for public transport on the rails. And this will immediately reduce emissions. But companies like Volkswagen are stopping this process from happening at every turn. All they want to do is continue making money at any cost.
Every time. Okay.
Now, this is interesting because these guys, who are actually smart guys and have a more sound argument, used the same tactics as the young, crazy, not so smart activists.
Hey, Patty.
Yeah.
So I got to give you an update to that story. They superglued themselves to the floor.
Right.
The German government. And the Germans are a little bit different. Europe is a little bit different than
what happened?
They just left them there. Like, okay, you superglued to the floor, and business continued as usual. They refused to feed them. And they shit themselves while you're on the floor.
Oh, wow. See, they should do that to everybody. Wait a minute. You glued yourself. Will you want us to rescue you now?
They refused to feed them, and they just left them there. You see, the thing about supergluing yourself anywhere is that eventually you might have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I think that's funny. I think that's funny.
Look, listen, let me just get it clear. I am totally sympathetic to trying to stop poisoning nature. I am a spiritual person at heart, and I love nature, and I would like to protect it. But that's funny.
I wouldn't. If I was concerned about the toxins that are in our environment, I probably would use less super glue.
Yes, and so
I'm just saying.
Eventually, they had to get a doctor in there because one of the scientists who superglued his hand to the floor could not move his hand clearly because it's superglued to the floor, and and so the hand swole up. And it became very dangerous, right? So his hand probably now has a lot of damage, tissue damage.
Wow.
So I would say that was a less of a bright thing to do.
Yeah, I was kind of commenting on their message. So if they're saying, listen, Volkswagen is kind of interfering with some reasonable and rational approaches to reducing carbon, and not that I haven't bought in on the whole, let's reduce our carbon to whatever unbelievable lower levels. I think that there are some problems with that, but even with that, his argument that, listen, why not really promote mass transportation? Why not bring down the speed limit? Why not do some of these things that would help in a way? And why is Volkswagen lobbying against it? So I think, well, that is what I thought was a more reasonable argument compared to these stop fossil fuels and stop fracking people who just say we need to stop everything and fossil fuels are totally bad and we need to just eliminate them completely. And I think that that is extreme, and I think it's driven by pure fear that's been, the flames of which have been fanned by opportunistic politicians who have been feeding that agenda for a while for their own nefarious reasons and agendas. So now you have these young kids who are just kind of totally freaked out. And the fact of the matter is, I don't really hear people talking about how the climate is changing on all the planets in our solar system. So, we don't have any activists on those planets. So, gee, I wonder what they're going to do. There's a whole other thing that's happening in our solar system that really doesn't have a whole heck of a lot to do with how much we drive our cars.
Understood.
So, but at any rate, that's really that's interesting. But yes, that's the new climate change protest stuff that's going on. Also, the anti-meat kind of, the vegans who are out there kind of pouring milk on the ground and doing, all of these kinds of activist things to get people to not consume dairy or meat. Which is really
so I'm
kind of bizarre too. I know.
So I'm vegan. Guys, eat whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whenever you want.
I'm carnivore.
I will try to restrain myself from coming and pour milk outside your doorstep because whatever, man. Whatever, guys. Yeah. Look, I don't even know what to say. That was funny. I'm trying not to laugh at them, but that is exceedingly funny because at the end of the day, guys, who cares about that stuff?
Yeah.
Right. Climate change is a very important thing. I get that, but you super gluing yourself to the floor is an act of arrogance because you assume somebody give a shit about what you have.
Yeah, well, it turns out the scientists there gave more than a shit, maybe a few shits, in their efforts.
Yeah. Anyway, guys, we come to the end of our show. Please leave comments in the comment section below. This has been a pleasure as always.
As always.
Even the scientists shitting themselves while they had the before. This has been a pleasure as always.
Just don't throw it at the ark.
Let us know what you think, guys. All right, take care. Bye-bye.